Welcome in, everyone, to the Unnamed Fantasy Football Show. Lisa Matthews, a.k.a. Slay Matthews, here with you, alongside Felipe Corral, Fresh Prince of Air Raid. Is that correct?
That's perfect.
And Zach Galia, he is the Jones, Suggs,
Yep.
and Harmony.
Yep.
So I think we're winning on the names column right now in week 1. But officially, I lost this week. Let's just be up front.
Yeah,
You're a winner.
I think I'm the only winner in
Felipe, you didn't win?
the studio.
I actually lost to Zach, but
Oh,
we
okay.
had the two highest point
Oh,
totals
yeah.
last week. So
Zach's feeling himself today. He's on top of the leaderboard. Let's take a look here of our Unnamed Fantasy Football League here. Look at those numbers. You're leading the top.
Yeah, I feel bad for
Tell us how
Felipe
you
though,
feel.
because if he played anyone else in the league,
I would have won.
he would have won. Yeah,
You would have won.
So,
It's okay.
yeah, I gotta get all
Give
my.
us your secrets. How did you
Okay.
get the win here today?
Well, I did the homework.
We're not today.
Lots of scouting reports. Flew out to some training camps. Wanted to make sure I knew what was going on. But no, in all honesty, this was one of those weeks where all the stars aligned and magically all the guys that I picked actually did well. But it was good. I was down quite a bit going into Monday Night Football, but having DeAndre Hopkins, having Deshaun Watson,
Josh Jacobs.
having
Josh
Josh Jacobs in the
Jacobs.
second game, that kind of helped me out a little
Did
bit.
few
So
things. Let's talk about you with your point total. What was that? I'm kind of blind.
154.72,
Ooh.
the second highest of the week, and that's without Antonio Brown. So
I know.
You know,
So you're
he's on my
dealing with
bench.
all this drama. What's going through your head throughout, first not showing up to practice. So you're like, okay, you still wanted to bet on him. I remember in our draft, you're like, let's bet on him, of course. Bet on a talent like Antonio Brown any given day. And then it comes out.
that he was released,
Yes.
and then so I was like,
The emotions there.
I was at a point where what trades can I field? But then he signs with the Patriots, so I start feeling a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
And then another
Yeah,
dilemma,
we'll see.
but he was at practice on Wednesday, so it's a good sign for this week. Hopefully, everything works out in his place, and he's starting this week. So
All the fantasy football owners of Antonio Brown freaking out during last week. And,
yeah.
you can't make it week 1. You can't overreact. You can't make dramatic moves. I was ready to sell my farm week 1. But, you take a step back and you reevaluate. You say,
Right.
okay, there were some outliers, obviously, in week 1. So you gotta give and take there.
Yeah,
We'll see.
and you never know. Like Antonio Brown, he couldn't have, I guess, ended up in a better situation with Tom Brady as his quarterback.
Kind
But
of makes me mad.
it'll be interesting to see kind of how much he plays, if at all, this weekend with everything going on. So it's still kind of like
to be determined.
the drama and the kind of in limbo situation.
But then you
with
start thinking about how does it affect people like Julian Edelman, James White, Sonny Michel that didn't necessarily see that much targets out of the backfield as it is.
Mhm.
Philip Dorsett, so they have a lot of weapons. Josh Gordon, so you start thinking about how does it affect those receivers, those running backs out of the backfield as well. So we'll see. You have a lot of decisions to make.
Tis fantasy
yeah.
football. I mean, I kind of got screwed in a sense. I was going up against Show T the money, and she had Sammy Watkins. So that there was no way catching. 11 targets, 9 for 198 yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, there was really no leverage
Yeah,
there for
that's
me
true.
to get out of
You
that.
ran out of luck.
He was actually, I was out of luck. He was actually on my bench in my family league,
Okay.
and I saw that just happening before my eyes and just sitting on my bench. Luckily, I won that one, but
Yeah.
not so much on this one. And then there were 3 of us with 138 points
Point
total.
something,
So, but it's a widespread. Of course, I'm in the last with that, which
That happens.
it happens.
Well, and
Week to
Sammy
week.
Watkins was, I think, the top fantasy performer, I believe,
Yes,
this week.
he was the
which,
top. Let's look at the top.
I mean, if you're taking bets, I don't think that he's the one that you're putting your money on for top performer by any means. But
no. But with Tyreek Hill out, obviously, it's going to help. Let's go into the top performers all across fantasy football. Let's look at that. Okay, Sammy Watkins. And you have Christian Felipe, correct?
Yes, I do. Luckily.
Luckily.
He led the team in targets.
Now, Zach, this is why you have the most points. You have 4 players in the top 10.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little misleading just because 2 of them are quarterbacks. Obviously, I didn't play, Dak and Deshaun Watson, but yeah, it's nice to see at least 4 of the top 10 on my squad.
You have ammo.
Yeah.
It's not fair.
I mean, Austin Eckler, I think, was a pretty big surprise. You know, I figured he would get a lot more targets, you know, taking over from Melvin Gordon. He has a little bit more of that pass-catching ability, but did I think he was going to go off for 39 points? No. So, I mean, you're thinking he's going to get kind of the league average about for touches, for catches, for points, but, you know, it's good to see him kind of blow up even more than anticipated.
And for those of you that own Austin Eckler in any of your guys' leagues, pick up Justin Jackson. You're a play away from potentially winning your league. If anything happens to Austin Eckler, Justin Jackson's
he's a safe bet.
Yeah,
that's true.
RB2. Moving on.
It's good to stack those up. And then as soon as I saw Hollywood Brown go off, I went to pick him up. 2 Spoons picked him up. So what you're seeing on the top 10, 2 Spoons as the owner of Hollywood Brown, he picked him up afterwards. So we were I was waiting patiently, and he got swooped up real quick, which I assumed he would. So 30.70, and I mean, he's going up against the Cardinals this week. So,
and John Ross, another waiver wire pickup that was a free agent last week and was, I think, the 5th or 6th best player of the week. So a couple big pickups across the board, and you saw obviously I had 2 quarterbacks in the top 10, and I decided to hedge my bets and grab a third.
You did.
You took Tom Brady.
So
I grabbed Tom Brady.
I grabbed Tom Brady as well. So
I'm playing him this week, I assume.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
against
safe.
Dolphins, I think it's a pretty safe bet with or without Antonio Brown. So pretty excited about that pickup as well.
And then Chris Thompson, Darius Geis is out for potentially 6 to 8 weeks, as reported today. You know, he's a good running back to have out of the backfield. He had a good amount of targets. I believe it was like 9 or 11 targets. Can't quote me on that. But Marquise Brown, he's another guy that I wouldn't have necessarily picked him up if I had that chance, just because, you know, he had like 5 targets and 3 of his 4 catches were for more than 20-plus yards. So maybe against the Cardinals he continues that. Who knows? But moving forward, I don't necessarily think that's a production output that someone like Marquise Brown.
Right, but 2 touchdowns in that. I mean, that's what's impressive about him is the bulk of it was off 14 snaps, I believe. So just having that type of production off only 14 snaps.
And he was playing the Dolphins, though.
Okay, so yes, we will get into that. But let's first look into the waiver pickups, as we were talking about earlier, swooping in and picking up some of these guys. Here's a look at that. And actually, we can add one because last night around 9:30, you know, as I'm ready to go to sleep, I picked up Darren Waller. So ink that in on this on this graphic. But here's here's the looks that we were just going over. Of course, you picking up Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Dang it. Missed on that one. I picked up Crowder. Now, with that, we have the news that came out today. ESPN said that he will be out for multiple weeks, and that is Sam Darnold. Yeah. So and he was a safe bet for him last week, so that's going to be tough for me, but he's going to remain on my bench until further notice.
And he had 17 targets last week? Yeah. I mean, it's kind of unheard of.
Yeah, he was his guy to go to in a pinch, so that's why he saw the production. Obviously, the numbers were there, caught my eye, and why I wanted to pick him up. But
yeah, and it's just such bad luck. It's such a good pickup, and
then that happens. It popped on my phone.
I'm surprised Darren Waller was even on
available.
The waiver.
Yes, so I went, I looked, and this happens. I don't know if this happens for you guys. When I watch Hard Knocks, I fall in love with the players, the person. I'm rooting for them and his story, and I'm like, oh, he's coming out mad this year. He's given his all. So. There's a little bias there, and obviously the offense looked great on Monday night. So Derek Carr, and he was getting a lot of targets. So that was
another Raider that I picked up this week in our fantasy league was Tyrell Williams.
Yes.
I mean, as soon as Antonio Brown left, I was like, I was on the fence about
smart.
it. And then after Monday Night Football, I'm like, let me go see if Darren Waller, Tyrell Williams are on the waiver wire, and they're both there. I'm like, all right. I did my homework like Zach does his, and
we all did our homework.
Right.
Even when.
And that's it. Like, if the Raiders offense continues to look like it did, which I don't know if that's sustainable or not, but if it keeps looking that way, Waller kind of being the top target for Derek Carr is a huge pickup, especially with how many tight ends are kind of in that second tier. You know, you kind of have your Kittle and Ertz and Kelsey and then everyone else. So having a tight end who gets 7, 8, 9 targets a game is pretty huge. And then Tyrell Williams too, just having someone who's going to pick up those Antonio Brown targets is a great pickup as well.
He was my sleeper going into this. I got him in my other league, but I'm Waller.
Waller, 8 targets, 7 receptions for 70 yards. I mean, that's
for a tight end too.
For a tight end.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Hopefully that equates to a win. Okay, so let's look at our top Cardinals players after week 1. David Johnson, my guy, he came through for me. Yeah. I was sweating a little bit, as you guys can imagine. 25.7, and then Larry Fitzgerald. This calls for my fat head. Hang on.
We got one. Don't worry.
My top Cardinal. You got this?
Yeah.
Boop, boop. My top Cardinal. Yeah. Very proud of him. Larry Fitzgerald, 25 points as well.
He's on my team, though.
And that's a steal, though.
I know, but we're talking Cardinal-centric. We're all cheering for these guys to come through, except when I play you.
Right.
Kyler Murray, 21.62. Zane Gonzalez, 13. Solid. You have him on your team there.
Of course. He's my guy.
Solid 13 points. Of course, Christian Kirk, 10.40. So these are our guys. These are how they're looking across the league and for week 1.
I feel like every graphic that goes up, Zach's team is.
I know, it's so unfair.
Yeah, the top waiver wire pickups, the top performers
except for David Johnson.
Can you?
Cardinals. Hey, do you see what's next to David Johnson? Slay Matthews.
Yeah,
read that.
It's 1 week. It'll be different.
And
next
you took
week.
a gamble on them too, Lisa. You picked them up with 3rd overall.
Yeah, I did. No, 4th.
4th
overall.
That's
I believe.
a good pick.
And the way that they'll utilize him, obviously.
Well, and that's another name to keep in mind on this list is Keyshawn Johnson. Kyler went to him early, went to him often. He had quite a few targets. I think it was probably 9, I want to say. But just someone to keep in mind. I know the wide receiver room is pretty stacked here in Arizona, but especially with Crabtree coming back this week too. But, you know, Keyshawn seems to be earning some more respect and trust with Kyler. So having him kind of as your bench kind of guy is not too bad.
Would you guys pick up Michael Crabtree at all? I mean, you can stash him, it's a
I
streamer.
think it's a smart stash, especially I mean, someone had asked, we had a fan question come through asking about Andy Isabella, and since he didn't even crack the receiver rotation last week, I mean, he's someone possibly to gamble on later on as we see the offense just come to form even more so and him develop. But with Crabtree coming back this week, I don't see that happening in week 2. And all of his snaps were on special teams. So
and Crabtree, I mean, you've seen his body of work. You know what he's done in the past, but I'd like to see kind of how he's utilized and kind of his snap count and just more of a idea of what he's going to do in Arizona before kind of snatching him up. I mean, you could always invest early and get in on the ground floor and hope for good things.
My husband did.
Yeah.
The moment he heard he was going to play, he sure did. But he also has Kyler Murray. So that's for Kyler the creator, that's Jackson in our league. Yeah. He has Kyler Murray and Keyshawn Johnson. So that to me is a good stack moving forward to see as this offense again comes to form and how Keyshawn he's already impressed tremendously with his route running and his connection with Murray. So that's a big one. Also with Christian Kirk, he was targeted 12 times last week. So that's someone he's going to go to. He has the confidence in going to him week to week in games. But so we'll see. Obviously, Larry Fitzgerald, a 41-yard reception, a 45-yard reception. I mean, you can't go wrong, especially as a whole for this offense. To have someone like Larry to go to, he's always a safe bet.
And for anyone that's, looking to trade for any Cardinals players, I think it's the smart thing to do just because, we're one of the teams that were in 11 personnel for the, we led the league. In week 1, Christian Kirk, 12 targets. So if you can trade or
and
for
10
him,
personnel, yes.
And 10 personnel.
Cardinals were 67% of the time in 10 personnel. That's 4 wideouts, 1 running back, 0 tight ends. So that they're going to be throwing to their receivers. So this is a team that's fantasy friendly.
Yeah.
So trade for him right now.
Yeah, do it now.
Make some deals.
And then you have a rookie quarterback that was, took a little time to get into rhythm in week 1. So moving forward, if you have the pieces to trade for Christian Kirk, do it. Like, don't even think about it. Just do it right now. Stop what you're doing and go trade for it.
Okay, fine. Take a note.
Yeah. And I mean, seeing Larry Fitzgerald kind of be Kyler's almost like safety net throughout the game too is definitely telling of kind of what to expect moving forward. I hope having him on my team, but it was nice to see. It was like, if something went down or he needed a big play, that was where he was looking for number 11. Mm-hmm. So
we're used to that here, bro.
Yeah, I know. I'm still getting used to it.
When in doubt, go to Larry.
Welcome to AZ.
Welcome to the Valley.
All right, let's get into our next segment, just looking at the players and their performances last week. Obviously going up against the Ravens this week. So there's going to be some fluctuation probably in numbers. Obviously, for Cardinals fans watching, you hope that they're over all of these numbers. They improve this week. So let's see. David Johnson had 25 points average last week. This week, do you think he will go up or down against this Ravens rush defense?
That's a tough question. I think he's going to go down. I don't think he's going to go down by much. But I think it's still too early to kind of tell, I guess, what we see in the Cardinals, but also in the Ravens.
Exactly.
So it's tough to predict, but I think he'll probably have a little bit less. But I don't think it'll be much less than 20.
You're saying that
25.
in spite of me, aren't you?
Maybe, yeah. I don't think I'm playing you this week.
No, you're not.
But yeah, I would say less, but I would say not much less.
Yeah, it will be a test for this. I mean, you're right. We don't know too much about the Ravens yet. It's just 59 points. They allowed only 10 defensively to the Dolphins, so we don't know who they are yet. It's
the Dolphins.
It's the
I
Dolphins.
have to keep reminding
too.
people,
but
it's
the
Dolphins.
But that's still the question is, were the Ravens that good or were the Dolphins that bad, or was it somewhere kind of in the middle where the Dolphins aren't as bad as they seem and the Ravens are good? But it's just week 1 is so hard to kind of make any bold predictions.
You can't really until week 4 really know who a team is. So
and then the Dolphins play New England obviously this week, so we know New England's good. So we'll see what happens there.
Unfortunately, who the Dolphins are.
Yes.
All right, Felipe, what do you think?
Same. I'm agreeing with Zach. He's not gonna go down by much. He'll still have around 20. So he's still a top 10 play. Obviously, he was a favorite target of Kyler Murray, especially in those clutch moments like we saw last week. So, he'll get one touchdown, whether it's on the ground or a passing touchdown. A receiving touchdown, excuse me. But yeah, he'll have around 21 points this week.
All right, what about Kyler Murray? He had week 1 performance 21.62. What do you think?
21. I honestly, I'm gonna kind of be a homer a little bit here, but I think it's going to be higher this week.
Okay.
I think he kind of, taking the first 3 quarters aside where it was basically 0 fantasy points, he did everything basically in the fourth quarter. So I think the offense finally getting into a rhythm and getting comfortable. I think this will be the week where they come out on fire rather than have to come back from down. I don't know kind of how the game is going to go, and it's too early to tell, but I definitely think we'll see a better rhythm from the offense in general, and that starts with
you
Kyler.
Hope the momentum just continues going. It's going to be tough on the road, early game for them, first road test as a team, but you just hope that the momentum from week 1 can just carry over into Baltimore. Felipe, what you got?
I'm sorry, Bird Gang, but I think his point total is going to go down.
Okay.
I doubt he'll have more than 20 points, but that Ravens secondary is, one of the best in the NFL. They just added Earl Thomas. They still have Tony Jefferson.
He had a pick last week.
He had a pick like this. I have Jimmy Smith. That that cornerback group is pretty elite. So, it'll be nice to see him start off fast and be consistent throughout the game. But that Ravens secondary, man, it's one of the best in the NFL. It was last year. So,
well, I also think Kyler only had 13 rushing yards
right.
in week 1 too. So I think there's kind of untapped potential there. Like we know how he can move and kind of how he's utilized. So I think, maybe his passing numbers go down a little bit, but maybe his rushing numbers kind of take a jump up. So I'm sticking with he's getting more than 21.
Well, the secondary is banged up too on the Ravens side. They'll be without their cornerback Jimmy Smith, and Anthony Averett will start in place of him. So maybe that will help.
Maybe
it's one of those prove-it games. You want to see
for both teams.
Yeah.
I mean,
definitely.
Are the Ravens who they were in Week 1?
Do I have to say, it was the Dolphins for the 5th time in this segment?
For the 5th time? All right, a couple of fan questions before we close. What do we got?
All right. We have a question from John O. He's asking, how many Cardinals on one team is too many? And he prefaces that by saying this is a serious question. So.
Ooh, well, yeah. Well, I mean, we already talked about Cardinals playing 67% in 10 personnel, so they're using 4 receivers most of the time. And again, Kingsbury prefaces it by saying that they're playing from behind, so naturally they're going to attack. It might not always be the case, but you kind of know that they're going to be, in that vertical game a lot. So, too many, never too many, in my opinion. Bench them if have them stacked in your bench if you stash them in your bench if you need them.
If you want to win, I'd say you can, like 3.
Yeah, 3. I would. You can't play too much with your heart in fantasy. Right. Unfortunately,
that's how you lose.
That's how you lose. So be smart about who you start week to week. Look at the matchups, but there's definitely some potential here with Cardinals.
Yeah, I mean, if my team, I have Kyler, Larry, David Johnson, and then Zane Gonzalez.
Yeah,
I think I'm feeling pretty good.
And he scored like what? How many points did you have again?
13 points.
13 points.
No, but how much did your team have?
I had 199.
Exactly.
Almost 200.
He'll repeat it.
Yeah, I don't. We'll see.
199.72. There you go.
Yeah.
But if
the points matter.
But if you can stack, let's say David Johnson and either Larry Fitzgerald or Christian Kirk, I think you'll be well off. If you stack Kyler Murray and one of his any of those players, Christian Kirk, David Johnson, and Larry Fitzgerald, especially with the amount of times that he threw 54 times last week. So obviously it was an overtime game, but if he's throwing 30 to 40 passes and you have one of his receivers or even David Johnson, I think you'll be well off.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, and that was not necessarily Cardinal specific, but I had Deshaun Watson and I have DeAndre Hopkins. So going into Monday Night Football, if one has a big game, both have a big game. If one struggles, the other one probably struggles too. So you're kind of, it's a high risk, high reward kind of set if you're pushing in all your chips on one kind of team, but it could work out for you.
Yeah. All right. Another question?
We've kind of covered this one a little bit, but basically Hitman 1995, he's asking how well Kyler played in the fourth quarter, what are his chances producing the same kind of numbers minus the turnovers versus the Ravens defense? And should we start him in fantasy football?
Well, it just depends who your other quarterback is. It's kind of, we're going into this blindly with that, but I mean, start him, see what happens this week.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we kind of covered it already, but
hoping the momentum carries over, and we'll see.
We'll see. I mean, I would, just like Lisa said, I think the depends on what quarterback you have, but
and then whether it's a 10 or a 12-man league as well, I think that also matters.
Yeah, and the experts, I think, would say to bench him this week, but
but I don't. I say
we don't
start him. I like it.
All right, you guys. Well, thank you for joining us today on the Unnamed Fantasy Football Show. Thank you all for watching. Good luck to you in week 2. We'll see you next week, 10 a.m. every Thursday here on YouTube.